Hey everyone, in this Excel tutorial, we're going to take an introductory look at pivot tables. Now, when you think about pivot tables for the Excel newbie or someone that is just getting into everything that Excel can do, pivot tables can be a little bit intimidating, but when you get into them and you start working with them, you realize how powerful and useful that they can be. I'm going to show you how to get started with pivot tables in this video. In another video, we're going to get even deeper into them. Before that, though, I would like to invite you to visit my Patreon page, patreon.com/sgtech, if you would like to support the channel for as little as a couple of bucks a month and ensure that I can pump out new videos more often. I would appreciate that. The link is also down in the description. So basically what a pivot table is it's a way to analyze further and more clearly your raw data. So here in this example, we have this raw data. And basically all it is it's a list of our salespeople, the region that they are working in, how many sales they made, how much revenue they generated, and the commission that they received from each revenue or from each for each month. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a very basic pivot table to pull out of this raw data some more specific data. Now, what you would have to imagine is if you were running a big company, this data might be hundreds of rows in size. So pulling out specific data might be very tricky, but a pivot table will make that easier for us. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we have a cell selected that is part of our data. So excuse me, it could be the first cell. That's the one I usually do, but it could be that one as well. Doesn't really matter. We're going to go to the Insert tab. And what we want to do is we want to insert a pivot table. So we are going to click on Pivot Table. And you will see that when we click on Pivot Table, it automatically selects the range of data. So starting here, ending here. That's why we have to select a cell that contains data. If we don't, watch what happens. So if we select this cell and go to Pivot Table, you can see it doesn't select the data at all. All right, so we're going to go there. We're going to say Pivot Table. Now, where do we want the pivot table? Do we want it in a new worksheet? Do we want it in an existing worksheet? So I'm going to show you both of these, but for now we are going to create it in a new worksheet. All right, so we're just going to click OK. And now you can see it's created a new worksheet, sheet number 2. And what we have to do now is we have to build our pivot table based on what information we want to see. So let's say that we want to know the sales and commission by month. All right. So what we're going to do, we don't care about the region at this point. We don't care about the salesperson at this point. We just want to see, okay, in X month, how much did we make in revenue? How much commission did we pay out? So we're going to select for this pivot table month. We're going to select revenue. And we are going to select commission. And you can see now that what it has done, it is telling us for each month how much revenue we made, how much commission we paid out. And it's totaling it up for us. All right. So that's pretty useful if you have hundreds and hundreds of rows of data. You don't want to have to go through and sort the data by month and then total it up. So this pivot table is actually doing that for us. And it's very simple to do, as you could just see. Now, what happens if we decide that we want a different set of data? So now, instead of by month, we want to know by salesperson. And this time, we want to see not revenue and commission, just how many sales they made. What we do there is we uncheck all three. And now we check off the 3 that we want to pull out of that data. So we want to know the salesperson. There, it adds in our 3 salespeople. We want to know how many sales they made. And there, now it totals up the sales that each salesperson has made. Now, if we want to add the the revenue into there, all we have to do is check that off. And there you have it. Okay, very simple. Now, you can see here it gives us the sum of the sales and the sum of the revenue. So we see that Linda has made 157 sales, totaling that much revenue. All right. Now, what we can also do is we can also change from the sum to, let's say, an average. All right. Now, we're going to change our pivot table data a little bit. We're going to add in month. And now look what it does here. Now it's dividing it up even further because we see we have Allison. We have all of Allison's months in there. We have George and all of his months, Linda and Steve, and then totals down below. But that's not really what I'm going for. However, this just shows you how powerful pivot tables are and the type of data that it can show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the sales and we are going to take out the salesperson. All right. So now we're down to just month and total revenue. All right. Let's say now we add our salesperson back in, but we want to know. So I'm going to go up here to sum of revenue. I'm going to double click it. And you see when I double click this, it brings up another box where we can further change our data. So let's say instead of a total of the sales, we want to know the average sales for each month. Okay, let's disregard the salesperson for now, but we want to know in January, what did our salespeople bring in on average, February, etc. So instead of sum, we're going to choose average. We're going to click that. And you can see here that in January, our salespeople averaged 38,000. In February, 41. March, 45. April down to 38. May, 43. And the average for all the salespeople for all the months was 41. So again, instead of a sum, instead of a total, what we are seeing now is an average. All right. And then from that average, so our January average for each of our sales people was 38,000. And you can see who was above average. For example, Linda, way above average. Steve, way above average. George, Allison, not so good, not so much above average. But then we can go to February and see the same thing, March, April, etc., and so on. All right, so we're going to clear our data completely, and we're going to change our criteria again. So I want to see by month how much commission we paid out. Okay, I don't care about anything else, just the month and the commission. All we have to do is check off month and commission. And now you can see by each month how much commission we paid to our salespeople and a grand total. All right, now if I want to see an average instead of a grand total, double click on that. Okay, so this brings us back to our chart. All right, edit number 2. So that is how powerful and how useful a pivot table could be. Because again, let's say you had 1,000 rows of salespeople all throughout the country, all throughout the continent, the world, whatever, and you want to know specifics about how they are performing, about how many sales they've made, you can easily pull that up with a pivot table. Now let's look at this pivot table because we've only been choosing 2 or 3 criteria at a time. What happens if we add all of them? This is what our pivot table would look like. Okay, so now we see we have our month. We have the sum of the commissions that we've paid out, the number of sales, the sum of the revenue for each month. But now it's also divided by the salesperson and the region that they are representing. All right. And so that's a fairly big chunk of data that we got here. You will more than likely want to break it down a little more than that, but it just shows you that we can go from something like this to something like this, to a very simple salesperson and the sum of their revenue. So using pivot tables, you can break down your data in any way you want, and it makes it a lot easier to basically go through that data and get the information that you need instead of looking at just a giant block of raw data and having to sort of pick out what you want out of it. So that is lesson number 1 on pivot tables. We're going to get a little fancier in lesson number 2. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave any comments below and questions. And as I said, please support my Patreon channel and support this channel at patreon.com/sgtech. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Take care.